Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 going on 17 novels of suspense. My current novel is All This Could Be Yours, an instant USA Today bestseller, and now in its second printing. And coming up will be Mother, Daughter, Sister, Stranger. I'm looking to see if I have a copy of that. I do. This is the early advanced bound manuscript of Mother, Daughter, Sister, Stranger, which will come out September the 1st of this year. And trust me, you will hear a lot about that as the time gets closer. But today we are here to meet Emily Ross and to talk about her marvelous new book, Swallowtail. Look at that gorgeous cover. And when you get your copy of this book, and I know you will, it feels lovely. It's very suede cover, very elegant, gorgeous, artistic, and very dark cover, if you think about it a little bit. Emily Ross, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is just out from Galliot Press. It is a small town mystery thriller. It is dark and in the best way of dark and riveting and thrilling. And it incorporates surrealism and dance and mythology and a murder mystery. And so, yes, indeed, it is quite a unique novel. So we're so pleased to have Emily Ross here today. Emily, welcome.
So happy to be here. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
You were a nominee for International Thriller Writers for your first novel, which was YA. So you hit it out of the ballpark with your first novel. Why did you decide to write novels for adults now?
I just felt I wanted the chance to write and filter some of my adult experiences through fiction. I felt like some reason I always end up writing like teens or writing teens, but I really wanted to try to write for adults. And I also felt a little bit removed from the teen experience. I don't teach high school. When I asked my kids questions, they said like, Mom, I'm out of college. I don't know. So I said, I'm going to write an adult novel.
What did you think about as you were writing this adult novel? Was it sort of something that you gained by getting to put an adult perspective in it, or something that you felt that you lost because you had initially written in that different tone and sensibility and different word choice?
I think it was a bit of a challenge for me because I love young adult fiction because it's so intense. It's so in the dramatic moment of teens, like everything's like the worst possible thing that ever happened. And teens are very myopic. They don't really reflect. So I had to work to create an adult character who has some interiority and some perspective and some reflection. And she's not like, she's not going to pontificate a lot because she's also a detective. But I really had to go through many revisions to really allow her to think about things and have perspective and be more patient. So it was a challenge for me, to be honest. It was a challenge.
And I want to talk specifically about your main character in the book in a minute, but an adult can have a lot more secrets, a lot more deeper secrets, and a lot more harmful secrets, and also can be sort of more skilled at being a bit more manipulative about them. Do you agree, and do you take that into account as well in writing adult fiction?
Yes, I think what really interests me with Samantha and with adults in general, that you hide things, you manipulate things. Samantha definitely, she's a detective. She knows when to withhold the truth, what to say, when to not to give the whole story. I guess it's not a spoiler to say she's hiding some things from herself. Yeah.
I love that. I love that as a detective, and we'll talk about her in literally 10 seconds. I love that she's trained to hide things. And that is such an interesting element that you put in your book. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Emily Ross. We're talking today about Swallowtail. I see Renee Herskowitz says, Emily, nice to meet you. And yes, it is. Andrew Ball is saying hello, and so many more. Darlene is here asking about the cover. Yes, Darlene, we will get to that. Randy says, I'm buying Swallowtail. Good for you. And Shanson says, love finding new to me authors. Yes, indeed. And that is why we are here. If you are new to Mighty Blaze, let me welcome you. Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic. You know this, by the fabulous Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep us reading new books and meeting new authors and discovering new novels. And we have been going strong for all those years, and we love it. And we will always be here for you with the best kind of books. Let me tell you a little bit more. Speaking of the best kind of authors, let me tell you a little bit more about Emily Ross. She is the author of the mystery thriller Swallowtail, as you've been seeing, which came from Galliot Press in November of 2025. She is also the International Thriller Writers Thriller Awards finalist for a book called Half in Love with Death, which is a YA book. Find that book if you are YA fans, or if you know anyone who is. That is an absolutely memorably terrific novel. She won the Al Blanchard Best Short Story Award for her short story Let the Chips Fall, which appeared in Devil's Snare Best New England Crime Stories 2024. She is a graduate of Grub Street's Novel Incubator and lives in Quincy, Massachusetts with her husband and Obi-Wan Kenobi, their very playful cat. And if you don't know about Grub Street's Novel Incubator and you are a budding writer or even a writer who wants to just get better, that is the place to be. And we can tell you about that in a minute. Speaking of telling us about it, Emily Ross, we're giving away a copy of Swallowtail. Well, we're not giving it away because I'm keeping this one, but Emily's publisher is giving a copy of Swallowtail away to one lucky commenter. So leave a question or comment or just general applause for Emily in the chat, and we will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show, and one of you will take home this marvelous new book. So Emily, tell us a little bit about Swallowtail.
Well, Swallowtail is a detective novel, and it focuses on a female detective named Samantha Starr, and kind of she lives in Quincy, and kind of what makes her story unique is that when she was 16, she was the victim of a violent abduction in which her best friend was murdered, and she was murdered by a serial killer who sort of fancies himself an artist, and he stages these crime scenes like Greek myths. And so her friend Bridget was left in a crime scene that's supposed to be the myth of Daphne, but a very twisted version of it. And Samantha herself is the daughter of a surrealist artist. And before this all happened to her, she had ambitions that she would just be an artist. That was her dream. And this really shatters it because it merges art and murder and pain and grief. And she eventually ends up deciding that she'll become a detective because she wants to stop the person who's done this. And, she ends up teaming up with Brian O'Neill, who is the officer who saved her many years ago. And the story kind of moves forward 20 years when the story opens. There is another murder that seems eerily similar to that first one. And not only that, but it cuts really close to home because it's someone her daughter knows. So she feels this now she's really driven. This is a cold case. And she doesn't know that they're even related, but she has to get to the bottom of it.
It's so fascinating and so twisty and so relatable and believable. That's the thing. I mean, this is not something that happens to many of us, but we do believe that it could possibly happen. And we do believe that it happened to her. And her behavior is very understandable. I mean, let's go back to Samantha in a minute, but what was the nugget of the first idea of this story? What made you think, I could write a book about what was that?
Strangely, it was dancers. It started out, there are dancers in the story. There are teen dancers in the story. And I started out through the many iterations of this book wanting to write a YA novel about teen dancers and a murder involving teen dancers. And I kind of morphed out of that. That became my current timeline. But I also... And this is, I don't, I kind of just go on a first draft with whatever comes up. And I discovered that my detective had this thing in her past that was going to involve art. And it just opened up. She's the daughter of an artist. And there was going to be this crime in her past that involved art. So that other thing entered in. But the start was dance.
It's so interesting how you take
Mhm.
one little pebble of an idea of a story, and when you drop it into the pond, the ripples change that
Absolutely.
story into something else completely. The main character, Samantha, is so well drawn because she is a police detective, but she's also quite poetic. And she sees the world in a very artistic way as well as a clinical way. Can you talk a little bit about those two parts of her brain and why that's important to the book?
Yes, she really is a person that's torn between two sides of herself.
Mm.
Um, because in order to survive what happened to her and kind of hold it together, she kind of submerges the side of herself that is artistic and maybe sees the world in a poetic way and sort of adopts this persona of I'm a detective, I get the job done, I follow the evidence. But that part of her is still there, and it comes out in how she sees the world because she really is that person too. And in early drafts of the book, I really held a lot of that back because I felt, oh, she's a detective. She can't be arty. She can't be poetic. And it just kept coming through. So I said, okay, I'm just going to own this. And she's a detective that's also arty and poetic. It's a poetic police procedural.
A poetic police procedural. It really is. And if you've ever heard, I don't think I've ever heard such a description before, but that is exactly what Swallowtail is. She also, you were talking about that she submerges her feelings and she submerges her past. So we hear about the same events in kind of different ways. Can you talk about how you balance that and how you use the quality of her memory in this novel?
It's complex because she has literally submerged a lot of the memory of what happened to her. I don't. This is not a spoiler. There were drugs involved in the original crime, so she does not remember a lot of what happens. She only has a few details, and she desperately wants to understand what happens. So she does a couple things. She paints and she tries to let um, things come through her painting because sometimes when you're doing something creative, you have access to parts of yourself that you don't have access to otherwise. And she also gets these little sort of visionary snippets of like I'm seeing like just a few wild seconds of a movie I can't quite comprehend.
And it's so much fun to get into her brain. I think we understand that she is a damaged person, and
Very
she
damaged.
understands that she's a damaged person, and that allows this book to be a little bit dark, and also for you to sort of tread carefully into personal trauma and allow us to reveal how that would feel without losing any of the readability and enjoyment of a good, solid police procedural. How do you juggle that? How do you balance that darkness with the success that you've had in getting a broader audience for this book?
Well, I think one of the things I did is there she has she's definitely suffering from trauma and it's damaged her ability to really be emotionally there for people. Um, but she has a family, she has a child, she has a wonderful relationship with her partner Brian. I tried to mix in, kind of fun moments, what they like to eat, what they like to drink. They dance, they make jokes because I feel like for me, I wanted there to be sort of light in this book, and she has things in her life that make her happy, and so it was always I kind of pacing wise. If I had a really dark scene, then I might follow it with we're having an old fashioned and we're talking about the case, kind of
I mean,
thing.
one of the things that makes art powerful is the juxtaposition of light and dark, just as you do in the book, and just as she does, and painters do in the novel. How much why do you know so much about art? And that comes clearly through in the book.
Mhm.
How do you know so much about art, and how did you use it in this novel?
I kind of I come from a family. I am the only person in my family who's not a professional artist. My father was a professional artist. He taught the classical painting program at the museum school for many years. He did fresco, mosaics, gold leaf, oil painting. People actually came from all over the country to learn painting techniques from him. And my mother was also an artist. She was a portrait painter and illustrator. And my sister is a very talented artist. So there was like literally like turpentine and paint and studios and canvases, and also sort of the kind of just talk about art and artists all the time in my family. So I didn't even have to like, I could just knew art history without taking class, although I did take classes. So that just kind of is sort of part of my vernacular. So it was very easy for me to access that in the book, and to kind of know what artists are like, at least the artists I grew up with. Yeah.
It's so much fun. It made me feel very smart and knowledgeable to read this book. And also, another thing that you do is then you take art and you blend it with mythology, and make that be part of the drama. Can you talk a little bit about why you did that and how you thought of it, and why that works so well? Why mythology works so well in a crime novel?
I think there was a lot to it. One of the things was because they're surrealists, if you look at surrealist paintings, they often use, you might see Greek gods and goddesses in some strange way in the paintings. They're dreamlike, and the myths that the serial killer stages, he uses Ovid's myths, and as I started reading them and studying them, I realized, we think of them as stories like kind of from the very distant past, but they're absolutely relevant today. And many of Ovid's myths are about crimes against women. When you really start to look at them, it's kind of astounding. There are assaults in them, there are rapes in them, and they're kind of couched in this beautiful language, and the idea of transformation. These women they don't call it assault because it's a god, it's a person of power, influence, but they're transformed. But when you look at how they're transformed, it's pretty horrifying. Like Daphne escapes her attacker by getting turned into a tree. So she'll never speak again. She'll never feel it again. She'll never move again, which kind of aligns with, some of the effects that survivors feel. So as the more I dug into the myths, the more I realized they're relevant to today and they're relevant to crime.
And the way you merge that into art is just so powerful, and we can understand it on many levels, which Samantha is the perfect person to do. So, continuing, you have art and you have poetry and you have also dancing. Dancing is still, I know you said you started with dancing, but as the nugget at the beginning, but dancing is still powerful. This dance team sort of full of the drama of mean girls in dance, and not only the girls. Can you talk a little bit about why that works so well for this story?
Well, I mean, because art is kind of art and having an artistic career is a theme in this story, and artistic jealousy and ambition comes with all the arts. And the dancers are, they're competing with each other. They're not always nice to each other. They're hidden agendas. I mean, if you watch Dance Moms, which I do, there's a lot of, I was a dance mom. So I went through a lot of dance classes and recitals, and I also saw some of the girls were not so nice to the other girls. So it's a beautiful world. Like, dance is beautiful. I loved watching young dancers. I loved watching all my daughter's recitals, even though people say, wasn't that kind of an ordeal? No, I thought it was really fun. But it's also, there are these underlying jealousy and backstabbing and backstories with the dancers, which I felt, sort of aligns with the idea of ambition and art and team.
Ambition and art play such a huge role in this novel. Did you know what was going to happen at the end of the book when you started writing it, or did this book just evolve as you wrote?
The very early drafts, it evolved as I wrote. I had the ending probably for a long time, but I didn't start out knowing the ending. No, it evolved. A lot of things evolved. And I didn't know who the murderer was for quite a few revisions.
I mean, it's
Actually.
interesting because I often think about writing like painting, that you try something and you see if it works. And it may not turn out to be exactly what you thought it would be, but it's better. And sometimes it's not good at all, but you can cover it up and start over and make it
Yeah.
into a completely different picture. But you still have sort of the pentimento underneath it of that you've learned something by what you took out.
Yeah, I took a lot out of this book. My first early drafts, I said, okay, I'm learning how to write a mystery. Because with Half in Love with Death, I kind of backed my way into mysteries. I want to learn how to write a mystery, and it's also police procedure. So I'm just going to throw everything in here in the first draft and just let it go wherever it goes. And it was, I don't even want to say how long it was, but it was over 200,000 words. And then I said, oh, this will be easy. I'll just take out everything that doesn't work. That actually was not that easy. There's probably 2 or 3 novels.
Well, but when you take out everything that doesn't work, again, like art or a poem or a dance, when you take out everything that doesn't work, you're left with the book that you meant to write. And it's not easy. Of course, it's not easy.
Yeah, I think it's this, and I think with mystery, somebody said, I can't remember, when you write a mystery, you build this sculpture and then you take things away. I think that's really um, attached to the mystery genre because you're hiding things. And so it's very much, and this is a minimalism in mystery that I really appreciate in a lot of people's mysteries. You're trying to get down to the bone, get down to what's really essential. And, I kind of love that, but it's a challenge for me. And it's a good exercise, though, because now I think if I write again, I have a much better sense of
course,
maybe don't go down there.
Exactly. I mean, because the point is the spareness and the bare bonesness of it. Part of the point of that is to keep people turning the pages. You don't want them to be, you want them to be immersed, but you want them to be propelled constantly ahead. One of the things that I sort of saved for last in talking about this book is the absolutely perfection setting. The way that this is set in Quincy, Mass. And I see Darlene says she grew up in Quincy, great city, she says, and that's great that we have some Quincy files here. Talk a little bit about what it's like in Quincy, Massachusetts, and why you picked that, and what it was like to write it so as evocatively and perfectly as you did.
Well, I knew I wanted to take my experience of Quincy and put it in a book. I wanted to kind of show the Quincy I love, the Quincy that I don't always love. I wanted people to know about it. I know, like Dennis Lehane has kind of done a lot with Quincy, but there isn't a ton of fiction that focuses on this city that I think is really unique because it's changed a lot over the years, but it's an incredibly diverse city. And it's a city that has an incredible history, goes all the way back to John Adams and John Quincy Adams and Native American people. It also is a city that has sort of a dark crime underbelly. It was the stomping ground of Whitey Bulger and his compatriots. And if you grow up in Quincy, I don't know if it's going to be true with future generations, but certainly with mine and my children, you're always someone has a story about Whitey or their life was touched by him. And I think that makes it's kind of unique to the community, but it's also a community where people are humble. There's a large working class and people take care of each other. I think Quincy is a community that really takes care of its people. It's really compassionate about people who are struggling. And I think those make it a very unique place. Plus, it's also got, I think, 17 miles of shoreline. It's got the Blue Hills. I mean, the typical image is very urban and kind of densely populated, but it's got so much marshland, woods. It's just a very unique place. The quarries, I could go on and on.
Yeah, you're right that it's a very unique place. People are recognizing it. In the chat, Christy H says, beautiful cover. We'll get back to that. Shannon Hansen says, definitely have the book on my TBR. Renee Herskowitz is here and Melanie Borelli is here. Susie Baldwin, hooray. So glad you're here. Shannon Hansen, Robin Stull says we love a giveaway. Absolutely so. Sue Street, Sherry Steuben is here. Vicki Gregory, who won the last giveaway, now to the round table. Corn Med, whatever that is, 3721. That's quite the handle. I know that, but welcome to all of you. It is so nice to see you. Thank you. I know you had a book signing in Quincy, which I've got to say must have been terrifying, because to go to where your book is set and, in the middle of that town and say, okay, bring it on. What was that like?
I was terrified because I made assumptions based on my experience and based on stories people had told me about some of the neighborhoods in Quincy. And I was really nervous. I would hear, you got it wrong. And it was just, they have a lovely new bookstore in Quincy called Next Chapter Books More. It's this beautiful little small bookstore. And it was just so warm. There were so many people from Quincy there, and they were sharing their stories. Like a lot of my book takes place in House Neck, which is a beautiful peninsula in Quincy that goes out right into the sea. But it also is a neighborhood, has a reputation for being very rough, especially in the past. And I was a little worried about that portrayal. And someone in the audience spoke up and said, I moved to House Neck as a child, and it was scary. It was really scary. And that was very validating to me. So it was, I still, and people came up to me afterwards and they shared their stories. But I still feel, people can I'm perfectly happy if somebody tells me, you got this wrong or whatever.
Well, but you got it so right. I've been to House Neck a million times and Quincy a million times. And as I started reading your book, it was just total immersion in Quincy. So much fun to see something that's familiar to me on one level, at least, so gorgeously portrayed. Let me go back to a question, and then we'll go to the cover, and then we'll take questions from the audience. What is the fascination with serial killers? I mean, there just aren't that many. I know you're blushing. Aren't that many of them, and yet it feels very realistic in this book. How do you think about them?
I feel like serial killers is like the puzzle I can't solve. I can't really wrap my head around how someone could do this. And so they really fascinate me because I keep coming back thinking, I'm going to figure them out. I'm going to figure out a serial killer. I'm going to get beneath the surface and understand them. And I think a lot of writers keep coming back to them because they kind of defy what we think of as human and, understandable. So I'm really interested in the many sides of them,
That's so fascinating, because I do think one of the reasons people, and you're making me think about this, one of the reasons people read crime fiction is for a solution. And so, to delve into serial killers, we in crime fiction, we give them a reason, that because of X, Y, and Z thing, they do X, Y, and Z thing. We're just searching for that. It's so wise of you. Lots of comments in the chat. I love you all to do that to talk in the chat. It really makes my day. And we'll take your questions in about 1 minute after I ask about the cover. And this cover is quite spectacular. It's gripping and sticky because I just keep looking at it and looking at it. Why did you name it Swallowtail, as much as you can tell? And was it always that title? And what did you think when you saw this cover?
I absolutely love the cover. And it evolved. I mean, I think it was a design company called Face Out made it. And they asked a lot of questions, and they kind of had me suggest imagery. And I knew I wanted there to be water because Pine Island is a part of Quincy that features in the book. And there are butterflies in the book. And so I just gave them a few suggestions, and they came up with this. The very first iteration was a little bit more subdued. And I kind of said, I love this, but I want people to know it's a crime novel. And I think with the way they did the title and the darkness of the shadow beneath the butterfly, they really, really accomplished that. I was like bowled over. It wasn't originally called Swallowtail. The working title I used was The Black Sea throughout writing most of the book, because Samantha kind of thinks of the part of herself that she can't access. she calls it the Black Sea, because one of the dancers who is important in the book, this male dancer Anton, who's come here from Russia, he also has sort of trauma, and he refers to it as the Black Sea, but also it is kind of a peripheral reference to Black's Creek, which is where Pine Island is. But I realized at the time that I was writing it, Ukraine was in the news a lot. And I said, people are going to think
Sure.
this is about Russia and the Ukraine. So Henriette, who's my editor at Galliot, and Anjali, who's one of the founders, we kind of just put our heads together. And I think it might have been Henriette came up with Swallowtail. And I just said, yeah.
It's wonderful on so many levels, and the homonyms that can be involved in it are extraordinary. Congratulations on this. Are you hooked on writing adult novels?
Yes, I think I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes, not you think, you are. You are.
I am.
Absolutely. And Jade is in the back room now with our new producer, Jade, who we welcome. And let's see if I know we have some questions from the audience. Vicky Gregory. Hey, Vicky. I know I'm just truncating your name too, like Shannon Hansen. What was your favorite part of writing this novel?
My favorite part of writing it, was kind of, I liked writing Samantha's. Samantha goes deep into remembering her past and into remembering art in her past, and she kind of uses her dreams a little bit. She gets little images from her dreams, and I loved writing those kind of dreamy passages, which are not a big part of the novel. And I also liked writing about Quincy and writing sort of about the gritty. Somebody from Quincy might say to me, it's not gritty. Oh, so the gritty, some of the streets in Quincy that are gritty, these kind of bleak neighborhoods, and the way Samantha, and some of the dive bars, I had great fun writing that. And kind of the way Samantha sees even art in some of these bleak streets. So I had great fun with that. And I loved writing Samantha and Brian.
Yeah, they're a great couple. It's funny that you love the sort of dreamy parts and you love the Quincy parts, which are kind of opposite, opposite kind of writing. Who else has a question? Hey, Katie says, do you see yourself in any of the characters?
I don't know, when you write a novel, you're kind of all the characters, but I see myself more in Samantha. She's sort of an aspirational me because she's way braver. I wish I could be that brave.
I do think you're right. There, every character comes out of our imagination. So there's some element of us that has concocted that out of our experience or hopes or dreams or desires or conflicts or antithesis. It's all from us. That's why every book is so different and so great, right? One last question. Let's take one last question for Emily before we spin the wheel of fun. Is there any talk of movie options for this book? It would make a good movie, says Randy.
I wish there were. I love movies, and a lot of people told me this is pretty cinematic. My son does work out in LA, and I'm going to try to hit him up to see if he can go to some people. But
right? He owes you, right, at this point.
Yeah, he does owe me.
I do think it's interesting because it is extremely cinematic, but it's meant to be a book, right? And the movie in my mind of this book is just great enough, that I can love it as much that way. We are running out of time. I can't believe it. So many nice people came today. I absolutely love this. People are fighting over knitting needles in the chat, whether a knitting needle would be a good murder weapon, you all. And Donna O'Neill says, what a great insight into the writing journey. That's, Marissa is asking a question that I think is really good. Can you speak to the influence of your editor on your writing? How can you were alluding to Henriette and Anjali earlier. How connected are you with them?
I think Henriette was the editor, and she really helped me a lot with this book because she helped me own the art. Even the draft that Galliot took had a lot less art in it. And Henriette said, really own the art. let her talk about it. Let her be an artist. And that made it, that like freed me in the book. That was really, really helpful.
That's great. A good editor is such a treasure. There's no question.
Yeah.
You all know when I look over here, I'm looking at the chat and I see Lori Hernandez is here, Julie Brinkley, thank you, Renee Herskowitz, Susie Baldwin, Robin Stull is here. Darlene says the neck is gritty. So she is agreeing with you. Emily, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for so much for talking about Swallowtail. Let's spin, Jade, the wheel of fun to give away a copy of Swallowtail. And we will spin the wheel. I love this part. It's so great. I love to see everybody who's here. I'm always worried I'll miss you in the chat. And the winner is Julie Brinkley. That is so fantastic, Julie. We love it that you're here. Julie is a veteran of Crime Time. So you know what to do, Julie. You will email me and we will talk to Emily's people and they will get you a copy of Swallowtail. The others of you, run, click, 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 get your own copy of this gorgeous book. It is so marvelous to be able to introduce Emily to you today. Quickly, before I say goodbye to Emily, let me remind you that next week, 2 shows at 2 p.m. ET, we will talk to our own Jenna Blum, whose book, Murder Your Darlings, came out today, and her launch party is tonight. I'm on my way there now. Emily, are you going to the launch party, or you're still sick?
I really, really wanted to go, but it's my husband's birthday dinner, so. But I am so excited to read Murder Your Darling.
You will love it. It is a wonderful, hilarious, scary inside book, very super meta about writing, about an author on book tour. So it is pretty great. I love this.
Like, oh, this could be yours.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that. And so the party about that is tonight. We will celebrate it here on Crime Time next week at 2 p.m. ET. And then at 4 p.m., Amy Pease's new book, Wildwood, which is absolutely great. Emily, you would love this as well. It is sort of William Kent Kruger meets Heather Gudenkauf, and quite beautiful. You can tell by that it's too shiny. My ring light is in it, but it is a police procedural, tender, touching, beautiful Midwest, highly, highly, highly recommended. And speaking of highly, highly, highly recommended, Swallowtail by Emily Ross. We hope you enjoyed today's event. Emily, thank you so much for coming on your husband's birthday, and you're just getting over the flu. You're such a trooper.
Thank you so much.
And it's marvelous to have all of you here today as well. You know, I love it when you come to Crime Time every Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET, and sometimes 3 p.m. and sometimes 2 p.m. You never know, but we're always here at 4, and I always love to see you. So have a terrific week. And remember, until next I see you, it's always safe inside a book.